This lecture is going to cover the results section for your research paper assignment. This material is taken from Chapter 20, specifically pages 374 to 376 and 379 to page 389. I suggest that you read those sections in this chapter of the book because they'll be helpful. I'm not going to go over everything that the book talks about, but I'm going to cover some things specific to the research paper assignment. I want to review the research process because I think it's good to know where you are at in the research process. And if you were going to conduct an actual study, what would you be doing? And then we'll discuss how to report your results or your findings and conclusions in the results section. So let's first review the research process. We've talked about this earlier in the class, but I think it's good to review where we are at and get a picture of the whole ideals before we talk about this smaller chunk of idea. We typically start our research process with some kind of topic in mind. We want to learn something about a particular topic. So then we start conducting a literature review. We use primary resources. We use good quality research, journal articles, and books to conduct a literature review. Then from the literature review, we'll develop research question or questions, so maybe more than one question that we want answered. We also develop a hypothesis. And as a reminder, a hypothesis is just an educated guess based on the literature that we've read and the theories that we've read. Again, in this class, I'm having you write null hypothesis, showing there's no differences between the variables. So we develop our research question that we want answered. We develop a hypothesis on what we think may happen. Then we develop research methods to answer our research question and to test our hypothesis. They're pretty much the same thing, but we want to make sure the way that we conduct our study will actually answer our research question and test our hypothesis. Then, after we develop our methods, we conduct a study. Conducting a study means that we collect data. However we design the study. If it's a survey, we send out the surveys and hopefully we get some back. And if they don't come back, we have to send out reminders. If we are doing an experimental design, we have to do the experiment, do a pre-test, post-test. We may have to get the samples of subjects and randomly assign them to groups and do all that fun stuff that we talked about in that particular research method style. So it just depends on what kind of methods we use. But we're collecting data. It's some kind of information that we're going to analyze to see if it answers our research question. Okay, so after we collect the data, we analyze the data. We can use statistical software to do that. If it's quantitative, which we use numbers, or it can be qualitative, which we use words to analyze the data. So it depends on what kind of data we have. Then after we analyze the data, we have to interpret what the results mean. When we get those numbers, we get those words, what do they mean? Then after we interpret the data, we have to report and evaluate the data. It means we draw conclusions and findings from our data. Again, that's for the process of somebody doing an actual study. I've heard some people say thesis. A thesis is for a master's level student. They're doing a research study. There's another thing a research or graduate master's student can do is called just a master's research study. They're pretty much the same process. The difference between a thesis and a research study is in a thesis, the student's work is actually bound and put in a library, whereas a master's research study is not. It is just you're done with it and your research advisor approves your study and that's it. What you're doing in this class, you are just proposing a fake study, a pseudo study, but I'm going to have you actually write up the results section and a discussion section based on what you think would happen based on the previous research. So in our paper, the results section is, well, actually in any research study, and if you're reading journal articles, they'll have a results section. They'll say what was found. You're reporting what was found. Then in the discussion section is the so what, the big idea. What do these findings mean to the rest of us? So for the rest of this lecture, I'm going to talk about the findings section, or most places it's called the results section, also known as the results. Most journal articles that you'll look at will call this area, the section of the journal article, the results section. I'd like for you to go ahead and title this section the results instead of findings. I think it sounds better. I think it's a better description of what the results section is about. You're just providing what was actually found. Again, you're going to have to do some making up of things when you do your paper. And for your research paper assignment, I want you to include the following sections within the results sections. So sections within sections. The first section is demographics. That's 1 to 2 sentences, maybe a table, depends on your data or what you're going to make up. And I'll explain each one of these sections in detail. The next section will be descriptive statistics. Again, that's going to be about 1 to 2 paragraphs with some tables. And then your last section is statistical analysis. That's going to be 1 to 2 paragraphs with tables. And it depends, the length really depends on the number of questions, research questions you asked. So let's talk about demographics. Demographics are who were in your study, what was their age group, what was the gender, what was class standing, all those things that are just who are those participants in your study. You just report what was found. If we have a survey, we would include the return rate for the survey. And this can be presented in either words or in tables. I have an example from a research study done by one of our graduate students, and she wrote the Modified Psychological Response to Sport Injury Inventory, the MPRS2, or II, was completed by 177 student athletes. There was 106 males and 71 females. And then she references Appendix A because she put the table for that data in Appendix A. So that's what the Appendix A, referring the reader to go over there. The range of the student athlete's age was from 18 to 31 years of age, with a mean age of 20.25 with a standard deviation of 1.81. So she's provided us how many people were in the study, told us that there was 177 student athletes that took the questionnaire. There was 106 males and 71 females. We know the range of the student athletes that took this particular survey, anywhere from 18 to 31 years of age, and then we have a mean age, the average age, of a little over 20 years old, with the standard spread of about 1.8 years. And so that tells us about the demographics of the people that were in the study. Again, you can use words or you can use tables. You can use either or with this. Again, it's probably going to be pretty short, probably going to be 1 to 2 sentences for your paper. Just depends on how you set up your pseudo study. Now, the descriptive statistics section is longer. Again, 1 to 2, maybe 3 paragraphs. Just depends on what kind of stats that you'll have in your study. And I would suggest that to learn how to read or write some of these sections, that you look at some of the completed research studies that are provided in the course documents. You should also look at the research articles that you're using for your introduction of your paper, because they'll write them in a specific way. There is a scholarly way to write this stuff. Okay, so in a descriptive statistics section, you need to provide the number of subjects, the mean, standard deviation, and standard error. You may also provide the minimum number and the maximum number. It doesn't necessarily always need to be reported, but the number of subjects, mean, standard deviation, and standard error must be reported. You may need to report the range. That would be the min and max, or the frequency. That just depends on what kind of data we have. So we'll just have to think about that when you design your study. Again, I would use the other studies to help you with this stuff. You also want to arrange your descriptive statistics in some kind of meaningful order, so it just makes sense for the reader to understand the numbers, what the numbers are about. It could be around a topic, it can be around an ideal. The question that we have to answer, as has been asked before, do we use tables or do we not use tables? I think the textbook does a really good job describing this in chapter 20, so please read that. I think our textbook authors say to use tables if it will take too many words to describe the data. A picture is worth 1,000 words, so provide a table and then provide a real brief description of what the table is about. I'm going to provide you some examples here in just a second. Sometimes it's easier just to use words to understand the information than the table. So it just depends on what will convey the information easier for the reader, because you got to keep the reader in mind when you're putting this data in. So here's some examples of tables. All right, so that table is actually from my dissertation, and that's the table 1. It is titled Gender of Athletic Training Students. That's what ATS stands for. This is a frequency table, and so I have the written description. It said that participating athletic training students were categorized into 2 groups. I have gender and level of experience. As can be seen in table 1, 158 female athletic training students, or 61%, and 101 male athletic training students, or 39%, participated in this study. So I have a table that it shows that, and some language wording that describes that, the breakdown between the gender of the people that were in my study. Another example from that same student that I used an example earlier. This is another descriptive statistics, and this is a table for group mean scores of the questionnaire, the MPRSII. And so how we have the N, which stands for the number of subjects. We have M, which stands for mean. SD, which stands for standard deviation. And then we have the minimum score and the maximum score. And one thing that we're missing there, if you're paying attention, is we don't have the standard error. Well, that's no good. We don't have the error, standard error. But we have a little description here of, this is part of the description. Table 4 represents the group mean scores of the 5 subscales from the MPRSII survey. Reorganization had the highest mean score of a 9.60, with isolation with the lowest mean score of 6.95. So you can find that on the table. And then you see at the note at the bottom of the table, she has the subscales, and she tells you what all those scores mean, just so you know. Right now, again, in the descriptive statistics, we're just reporting what was found. We're not analyzing the data at all. We're just providing what was found. We're not analyzing. We're just reporting what was found in the descriptive statistics section. It's in the statistical analysis section, we report more information on what was found. Some other things about tables and APA that I want to point out. You can see in on pages 140 to 141 in the concise rules of APA, or page 150 in the publication manual of APA for a table checklist. It's good to go through that and look at your tables when you develop your tables. Some things I'm going to point out about tables. You should have a table title. It should be brief, but it should be clear and explanatory. You should provide your independent variable, the dependent variable, the number of subjects in the title, or it can be within the table itself. Should provide enough information for the reader to understand what the table is about. I'm going to provide some examples, some more examples here in a second. All your tables should pretty much look the same, should be consistent across the board. If you have a column or a row, they should have titles to them so the reader understands what those rows or titles or columns are about. You should always italicize the title. Any kind of statistical notations, which would be like the mean symbol, the standard error symbol, the standard deviation symbol, and any other symbols that are used should be italicized. You should always, for when we get to ANOVA or t-test tables, you should always provide the probability levels, the P.05. Well, talk about that in a little bit more. You'll see an example of that. If you need notes, you need to provide notes. I gave you an example in the previous example of a note. Tables should be self-contained on one page. You shouldn't move over to a second page. If they go over to a second page, you have to start a new title heading on the second page. I would like you to place all your tables in appendices for this assignment. If we were doing the actual thesis or a master research study, you would keep them in your chapter. This would be chapter 4 in our master's research study or in a thesis. But for the purposes of this paper, just put your tables in the appendices. You're going to label them Appendix A, Appendix B. You're going to put them in order. When you're trying to make everything line up, use your tab button on your keyboard because that'll make everything line up. And when you're looking at your tables, if you're going to use the insert table function, you have to make sure that you look at it as how it will look if you print it out. It doesn't look the way it's supposed to look according to the APA manuals. Okay, so it has to look the same way that shows it in the APA manual. Again, refer to the table in the text. Again, it should be brief. You don't need to spend a lot of time describing what's in the table, but you should refer to the table in the text. I like you to refer to the appendices, how I have there, Appendix A, Appendix B, Appendix C, whatever, how many you have. That just tells the reader where everything's located. You start numbering your tables, table 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, how many you're going to have. And I think that's pretty self-explanatory. All right, here's some examples. The first one I have that arrow by, table 1. It's not a good table title, and the main reason why it's not a good table title, it's just doesn't provide us enough information. It says group mean values for pre and post test. Pre and post test for what? It doesn't tell me anything. What's the group mean values for? What pre and post test? It needs to give me the test that it's being tested for. I don't have any kind of variables in that description at all. It's not clear. I don't know. It does not tell me enough information that I can understand what that table means by just looking at that table. Now, if we look at the next table 1 on the right-hand side, it says standard and converted power values using vertical jump measures for female volleyball athletes. That's pretty good. It's okay. But the thing that it's missing is that we don't have a note at the bottom telling us what the heck the difference is between standard and converted power values means. I don't understand what that means. So, but we have the We have the N, which again is number of subjects. We have the letter M as in Mary. For mean, we have the min and max values, and we have standard deviation and standard error. The two below, Table 4 and Table 8. Okay, so we have the group mean values of novice and experienced athletic training students' total professional socialization. I have a note down there telling us the scale is based on a 1 to 5 scale. So that tells us the 5 was closer to the 5 on the means that they scored high on that particular scale. We have experience level. We're comparing the novice versus experienced. And then we have the number of subjects, mean, standard deviation, standard error, min and max. Now, Table 8 is not a descriptive table, descriptive statistics table. This is actually for an analysis of variance, which is also known as the ANOVA test. So we have analysis of variance between novice. Now I put the N value, the subject number, in the description here. Novice and experienced athletic training students on the total professionalization. So this is a little bit different in this table since it's a statistical analysis table. Now we have DF, which stands for degrees of freedom. MS, which is mean square. The important value there is the F value and the P value, which you'll see in the upcoming section. I'll talk about F and P. P is significance. And then you'll notice next to the 0.042 underneath the P value, I have an asterisk. That's telling us that the P is less than a 0.05, which means there is significance in this. There is a significant difference between these two groups. So again, these are just some table examples. Our last section in your paper, or for this section, is called the Statistical Analysis section. And here we want to answer the research question or the research questions. So you'll basically just restate your research question, and then you answer the research question using statistics. I'm going to give you a couple examples here so you can see how this is done. Again, we should use our statistical test. For example, a NOVA, t-test, or whatever we say that what kind of statistical analysis that we're going to use. That statistical test should be used, and then we should use the descriptive statistics to answer the research question. The answer should be either yes or no, and I'll give you that example here in a second. Okay, so here's our research question. Again, it's for my dissertation. Research question 1. Were there any differences between novice and experienced athletic training students participating in an undergraduate entry-level KHEP accredited athletic training education program in the total professional socialization variables as measured by the ATPSI? Again, this was a questionnaire or survey that I had both athletic training students at the beginning of the program and at the end of their athletic training program take this questionnaire. And then I compared to see if there are any differences between novice and experienced, and there are 7 different variables within the professional socialization of athletic training students. So I answered the question. Tables 4 and 8, which I showed just a little while ago, tables 4 and 8 revealed that there was a difference. So yes, there was a difference. I'm saying yes, there was a difference in the total professional socialization of novice and experienced athletic training students participating in an undergraduate entry-level KHEP accredited athletic training education program. Now, what I have in red text there is I have the F value from that table 8 that I showed earlier, saying that there was a difference. We need to report the statistics. F with the degrees of freedom of 1 in 255 equals 4.160, straight from that table, with the p-value equal to 0.042. So we always want to back up our statement with the statistical information. And then I had to qualify something. It says, while significance was found between a novice and experienced athletic training students participating in the undergraduate entry-level KHEP accredited athletic training education program in a total professional socialization variables, the effect size was low with a D equal to 0.26. It was found that the group mean not for novice was greater than the experienced athletic training students, and you can see table 4. So what I'm saying there is, yeah, there was a difference, but there really wasn't a difference, because what the effect size is, that it's telling us that they were so close that statistically, yeah, there was a difference, but it really wasn't that meaningful. And if we go back to this table and we look at the mean values, novice had a mean value of a 4.57, and the experienced had a mean value of a 4.48. Yeah, there's some difference there, but it's really not that meaningful. And in fact, what this found is that incoming students were more socialized into the athletic training profession than the experienced athletic training students, which makes 0 sense. So what I had to write about in my chapter 5 is, were the athletic training education programs actually desocializing them into our profession? Or were somehow those incoming or novice athletic training students already had experiences as athletic training students and were already socialized into our profession by the time they started? So, but that's the next lecture, different area. But we still have to answer the question. We have to use our statistical analysis to answer the question. We also have to use the descriptive statistics to answer our research question. As I brought it back to the group mean values to say why, yes, there was a difference, or no, there isn't a difference. We have to look at the means, typically find out if we can see if there's been a change in behavior at any type. All right, as a review for this information is just to provide you a review of the results sections and how to write that, to write the results. Again, we're going to collect data. We'll put that data in some kind of statistical software. Again, you're not going to have to do this. You're really not going to have to do statistical analysis, but you're going to have to come up with some kind of information to write demographics, to write descriptive section, write statistical analysis section. You need to base your information on the previous research that you're using from journal articles to come up with some legitimate numbers, legitimate information for your fake study, based on what you think will happen in your fake study. Give us numbers, or give me numbers. Try to use the previous research, literature, and the results sections from those articles to help you write this area. Look at some completed studies that I have in the course documents to help you with the wording, how to write this section. Again, the journal articles will be very helpful. You need to write clearly and concisely, which means they're very specific. Each word is very important, especially when you're on limited space. You have to be able to convey a lot of information very quickly and very concisely. Got any questions? I'm here to help you. And I hopefully you'll find this somewhat enjoyable.